So this is Lolf. He's a bronze turkey, about 6 months old, and he got his name from a 7-year-old who had a little trouble pronouncing the letter R. And I asked her if she really wanted him to be called Rolf, but nope, Lolf is the name. He also had 2 girlfriends, Los and Londa. Now Lolf, Londa and Los are all in the freezer, and I debated for a long time if I should keep them over the winter or not, and there are 4 major reasons why I chose not to, the 4th one being the final nail in the coffin. And this is reason number 1. Turning them into food was my intention from the get-go. I got them as chickens and was supposed to raise them, harvest them and feed the family, but after a while they kind of grew on me with their fun personalities. They ran around like big goofballs, acting like the farm mascots. They were much calmer than the other poultry I have. The runner ducks and the egg layers are much harder to get close to, but these guys were following me around and ate straight from the hand. I feed the pigs twice a day, which they quickly figure out. They always come running to see if there is any spillage, which there often is. I initially had 5 of them, but suddenly there were only 4 and I couldn't figure out where it'd gone. But one day I counted only 3 left and this one was missing too, so I called her in and she came running licking her face. So I went over to where she came from and I found a half-eaten turkey in the woods. So for several months now, this one has not been allowed to be outside all on her own. That delicious turkey, huh? The second reason they ended up in the freezer is that their favorite pastime was to jump up and sit on stuff and poop, without a care in the world on where the droppings ended up. From the moment they were big enough to go outside, they searched for altitude, jumping up on every possible thing higher than 1 meter above ground. Like on Booger, they could just sit there for hours admiring the hydraulics or each other. Or my car. Or any visitor's car. And then it's just not the poop that I'm worried about. Now this guy didn't care that much about the paint, so he generously let me film this so that I could show you. But this is usually not what you want when people come over for a visit. The third reason is that once in a while, or more and more often, they went on walks around the neighborhood. I've gotten several phone calls from neighbors that the turkeys are strolling around. I even learned on Instagram once that they were over at the neighbor's garden helping harvesting some carrots. And as long as the neighbors are cool with it, I'm cool with it. They always came back before dark, but the biggest issue with that is that they had to cross the road every time they went out. And there's not a lot of traffic, but there is some, especially when people are going to or from work. And I got a text from one of them that they would like a turkey on the grill, but not until New Year's and not in the grill of the car. And I totally get that. Another time they had jumped over the fence into the garden of another neighbor, and when she let their dogs out that morning, there were turkeys scattered all over the place, and one of them got stuck in a tree. So now the other 2 are standing back home yelling, and she's making some noise here as well. And I'm actually not sure what to do. I'll try and shake the tree. Hello? Once I got her down, she knew exactly where to go to get home. So I just followed her. We crossed the street together and had a touching reunion with the other 2. Okay, so the fourth reason why the turkeys ended up as dinner is this. I spent so many nights trying to get them to sleep inside. I had them in the coop the first month, but the minute I let them outside, they found places to stay that's not where I intended. Every night I went out and got them inside, and they were at different spots every time, so I had to find them first and then herd them in. Eventually they moved higher and higher, and it got harder and harder to move them inside. And one day I just got tired of trying, and they've slept out most of the nights ever since. They took a liking in this old trampoline stand, and every day when the sun set, it was like they were summoned by this piece of metal to rest and prepare for another day. It didn't matter what kind of weather it was, cold or windy or rain, this is where they decided to spend their nights. They didn't care that I made them a nice place to sleep inside with wooden roosts in the right size. They couldn't care less about it. They preferred this cold piece of metal any day. So this was their evening ritual. They did a little dance to figure out the sleeping arrangements. Even though they ended up at the same spot every night, they had to jump around a little first and finally settled down and went to sleep. When winter came, I again tried to get them to sleep inside. First I carried them in from the dark, and then I took down the old trampoline stand and hoped I could break their habit of sleeping outside. But when I went out to herd them in, they just went higher up, and I just didn't want to argue with them every night. And now it's freezing cold with snow and ice, so I decided to harvest instead, like the intention was from the beginning. And I know that everything I've mentioned today could be solved by just locking them up inside and not letting them out at all. And I did try that a couple of times, but they seemed miserable being used to roam freely and then suddenly get locked up in a coop. So I just opened the door and let them back out. So this year's turkeys was a test run. I'll definitely do turkeys again. So next year I'll manage it a bit differently and maybe not so free-ranging. I have some plans and can't wait for the spring to arrive. In the meantime, the kids and I will enjoy turkeys for dinner that hopefully had a good life, and isn't that what it's all about? But we're definitely gonna miss Lalf, Los, and Londa. It was good to see you again. Thank you for watching. The December is here and I hope it's not too stressful yet. Try to enjoy it as well. Toodaloo.